It's a pleasure to be with you. And first of all, let me just say thank you to Stelios and to One Business World for inviting me today and for bringing together such an awesome group of experts. I'm Amanda, like it says on the slide, and I lead the UN Global Compact's Network USA, which is the US chapter of the UN Global Compact. And if you're not familiar with the UN Global Compact, we're essentially the world's largest corporate sustainability initiative. We have about 23,000 companies who join the compact around the world. And here in the United States, we have another slide with my face on it. Here in the United States, we have about 1,000 of those 23,000 companies. And we help them embed sustainable business practices. We help them convene and learn from each other. And we help them scale their impact and address common challenges. We're really fortunate to have a kind of front row seat to the conversations that are going on inside companies about sustainability and business strategy. And that brings me to a question that I've been asked a lot recently. And that is, what is happening with sustainability here in the United States? Is it over? Is it over? We hear this so often that we're currently conducting a North American sustainability survey with our UN Global Compact colleagues in Mexico and in Canada and with GlobeScan. And we're trying to better understand how sustainability leadership is changing, particularly in the North American region. Because if you only follow the headlines, you might conclude that it is over or that it's at least losing momentum. But that's not what we're seeing. It's not what I'm hearing in my conversations with sustainability leaders and with others inside of companies. I think something actually quite more interesting is happening. Sustainability isn't disappearing. It's growing up. It's becoming more disciplined. It's becoming more integrated. And perhaps most importantly, it's becoming more connected to competitiveness and to actual long-term business value. In many ways, we're moving from a period of expansion, which happened after COVID for sure, into a period of maturation. And I see that evolution happening in 4 ways, which I want to talk to you about. Okay, the first sign of maturity is that sustainability is moving into the core business. So over the last decade, sustainability has primarily been managed and operated as a standalone function inside of companies. Today, however, the most successful companies are actually embedding the function into finance, into procurement, into operations or legal or enterprise risk management. And for many CSOs, chief sustainability officers, that can feel really uncomfortable because their teams are becoming leaner, perhaps. Responsibilities are shifting into other functions. And heightened scrutiny of every single sustainability initiative can create this impression that sustainability is becoming somehow less important. However, I see the opposite. For years, sustainability leaders, including myself, would stand on conference stages and say that our job was to work ourselves out of a job and that sustainability would become everybody's responsibility. Many of us didn't exactly expect for that to happen quite literally or this quickly, but that is exactly what is starting to happen. Before I joined Network USA, I led ESG at Meta. And a few years ago, the sustainability and the energy teams were totally managed separately. Today, those functions have been brought together under one leader. And that's because decisions about AI infrastructure, about investment, procurement, water stewardship, all of those things, climate commitments, they cannot be made independently of each other. And so sustainability isn't something that happens. It can't be something that happens after a business decision has been made. It has to be built into that decision, and it's starting to be. So the second sign of maturity is that companies are shifting from optimization to resilience. And let me say what that means a little bit. So historically, competitive advantage has come from being leaner, faster. These are all things you know, more efficient. Build the lowest cost supply chain, for example, reduce inventory, minimize redundancies, secure the cheapest source of energy. Those strategies have created enormous financial value for shareholders. But over the last several decades and last several years, companies have experienced these disruptions that have exposed the limits of that optimization, or at least optimization alone. A global pandemic, supply chain disruption, energy volatility, extreme weather, geopolitics and instability in that space, rapid technology changes. So taken together, those events have forced leaders to ask a different question. Not simply how efficient are we, but how resilient are we? There's that word, resilience. If our warehouse is destroyed by a tornado or some conflict takes out a key supplier, can we continue to operate? Or how can we continue growing in an increasingly volatile world? Sustainability is absolutely a part of the answer to those questions. And the shift is showing up in investment decisions as well. According to the World Business Council's most recent Business Breakthrough Barometer, which just landed this week, 92% of business leaders globally expect sustainability to be a source of competitive advantage over the next 5 to 10 years. And 89% maintained or increased their investments in sustainability over the past year from 2025. So that doesn't look like retreat, that looks like evolution. The third sign of maturity is how dramatically the energy conversation has changed as a proxy. Energy is no longer being discussed primarily as a sustainability issue or considered simply as a utility bill. Even just a couple of years ago, companies would come to us at the Global Compact and they'd be worried about emissions reporting. Now they worry about that, but they also worry about whether there's going to be enough power available to generate for future growth and for future expansion. That's like a huge shift from the conversations we were having. We've spent years and years debating how to decarbonize energy, and now we're also debating whether we can build enough of it. So it's a big shift. One of the most striking developments over just the past year, I would say, is how quickly AI has transformed discussions about energy and infrastructure. Companies are asking now entirely new questions. Will there be enough capacity? Will there be enough infrastructure? Enough water, enough community support? And I think increasingly, how do we balance the economic opportunity that these projects create with legitimate concerns about land use, water resources, and local impacts? So AI is creating all these really extraordinary opportunities for innovation, for growth, but it's also exposing infrastructure constraints that many companies haven't had to think about in decades, really. So as organizations expand data center capacity and energy infrastructure, they're recognizing that long-term success depends not only on securing power, but on earning trust and maintaining strong relationships with local communities. And we're starting to see this in the news all the time. That's a big reason why Meta, and not just Meta, other hyperscalers too, have integrated its energy and sustainability teams. It's this recognition that energy decisions increasingly affect everything else, from water resources to community relations to long-term operational resilience. So the fourth sign of maturity is that the focus is moving from ambition to execution. A few years ago, really 2 years ago, companies were still competing on ambition. They were making these bold commitments on platforms, including on the UN Global Compact platforms and stages and at our events, standing up, making big announcements. Today, they're competing much, much more on execution. They're spending less time asking what commitments to make next, which used to be a lot of our email traffic, and more time asking how to deliver on the commitments they've already been making. They've become more disciplined about where sustainability creates business value out of necessity. They've become more disciplined about governance, about data, about accountability. In short, I think sustainability is becoming less of a communications exercise. It never was completely, but it may have been more of one. And now it's becoming more of a core business function. Companies are saying less publicly, but they're meaning more operationally. And that, to me, is one of the most important developments happening today, and it's why I remain optimistic about where sustainability is headed, despite the noise, the political debates, the complexity of it all. I do still see companies moving forward, perhaps not as publicly, but certainly steadily. Regulation does remain an important driver, but increasingly the conversations are not solely led by compliance obligations. They're also being led by new business realities. Companies understand that the future will require stronger systems, better data, more transparency, and more resilient operations. And they recognize as well that no company can navigate all of that by itself. So that's why I also believe that the UN Global Compact continues to see consistent participation and engagement from companies. We provide a platform for collaboration. We provide a platform for shared understanding on what's next and for co-creating efforts to scale progress beyond what companies can do on their own. For the first time ever this coming September, our private sector forum, which happens during the UN General Assembly, I'm sure some of you come to that, will focus specifically on the energy transition, and they'll bring together CFOs, CEOs with public sector and civil society leaders to discuss the investments, the partnerships, the policy conditions that we need to accelerate progress. And we actually have begun those conversations already this week over at London Climate Week. We've been facilitating roundtables with business to move forward that agenda and inform that September meeting. And what's interesting about that is that the people who've been showing up to these conversations aren't any longer just the sustainability people, right? It's CFOs. It's CFOs thinking about capital allocation. It's COOs thinking about continuity, and it's chief procurement officers thinking about suppliers, and so on and so on. That's another sign that sustainability isn't moving out of the business conversation. It's moving into the center of it. So if there is one message that I would leave you with, it's this. Sustainability isn't disappearing, it's growing up. It's moving from the margins to the core business. It's shifting from optimization to resilience. It's reshaping how companies think about energy and infrastructure and growth, and it's moving from ambition to execution. And these trends are exactly what we're hoping to better understand through our North American sustainability leadership, which I mentioned with GlobeScan. We'll be sharing the results of that during Climate Week in September. And if your organization hasn't participated and you would like to, you can scan the QR code. We'd love your perspective. That takes you directly to it. Regardless of what this survey tells us, I am confident about one thing, and that is that the underlying forces that are shaping sustainability and shaping the agenda, things like climate change, like resource constraints, technological change, supply chain resilience, all of those things, even customer and investor expectations, they're not going away. Those pressures are just continuing to build. And the companies that are best positioned to succeed are not going to be the ones that pause when conditions become difficult. They're going to be the ones that use the moment to build their resilience, to strengthen their systems, and really prepare for what's next, because it's not disappearing. It's becoming part of how successful companies operate, and that is what growing up looks like. Thank you.